parties have been making from the previous years until now, what change they'll bring forward. I just feel like it's not enough to feel like I know who exactly to vote for.
I did register to vote. I did register because I want change in our country.
I think it's very important to vote because everybody has a voice and your vote counts, it matters.
Welcome back. This is Good Morning Namibia. Now, saving money is a fundamental aspect of financial health and stability. At its core, saving involves setting aside a portion of your income for future use, whether for emergencies, specific goals, or long-term security. This morning, we're joined in studio by the Managing Director of Simonis Storm, Mr. Bruce Hansen, to tell us more about this very important topic. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Good Morning Namibia.
Good morning, Denver, and thank you for having me.
How are you doing on this cold Wednesday morning? I see it's still about 4 degrees Celsius outside at the moment.
I'm doing very well. And quite frankly, I do love the winter.
Yes, there is something special about winter.
Yes.
If we have regard to both short-term as well as long-term goals, what is the significance? What is the importance of saving?
Saving is very important, and I think you've just mentioned now short-term and long-term. So it's really savings and investments that we're talking about. So saving being for the short-term and investments being for the longer term. But if you think about it, many times we think that when we have a job, we'll have that job for eternity. But what happens when you lose your job? So what you need to make sure is that build up some kind of savings. So if there's a job loss, that you'll be able to carry yourself. And it's not just for that. I think it's also for when there's any emergencies that happen, that you have extra cash that you can use. But I think fundamentally what you want to do is you want to take care of your family. So that's important that you then save. And I think also when we start talking about significance later in your life, because people always talk about I want to be significant in life. It's also the fact that you'll be able to give to other people that are in need. And that's really, I would think, sort of two of the fundamental issues I would think that you save and that you invest.
As we proceed to looking at some of the best strategies to save money, some viewers who may be tuning in at the moment may think that during these economic dire straits, I barely make ends meet with my salary, if I'm lucky enough to have a salary.
Yep.
So against the backdrop of the economic realities of the day,
Yep.
which would you say are the best strategies to start saving?
And it's very, you've now pinpointed the fact that my salary might not even be
See
enough.
me through.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, but I do think, you have to have a couple of principles here. And one of the principles is that, you have to live within your means. Now, it is very difficult given the economic circumstances, but one would have to try to do that. And if you can't do that, is there a possibility for you to skill yourself up and maybe have, an additional income? But let's say, for instance, you are at a place where, you have a salary, that you try and live within those means. And to do that, you would have to have a budget. And I know that most people, when you start talking about a budget, it's like swearing at someone.
People get very uncomfortable.
Very.
Yeah.
So what we do is we talk about a spending plan. Have a spending plan, because the spending plan will then show you exactly where you're at and where you could possibly save. But it's very important that we have to understand that you have to live within your means, because if you can't live within your means, you don't have what we call margin that you can build in. So
margin for breathing. That's what you don't have.
That's what you don't have. But there are things that you can do, and sometimes it's also our vanity and our ego that do not allow for that. Because instead of taking a taxi, you would like to have your own car, or instead of living in a specific neighborhood, you would like to live in a different neighborhood. So those are the things that so first of all, live within your means.
Are you saying that if I reflect on my spending plan, and I like that term, that I'd be able to identify where I'm able to make some adjustments,
Yes.
which would then loosen up some cash
Yes.
for possibly saving?
That's right. In Denver, I can tell you now, I speak to a lot of people. I've been in this business now for probably 22 years now. And I speak to a lot of people. And once you start looking intently at your spending plan, what you find out is that there are invariably places that you can save. A typical thing would be Do you bring your lunch from home, or do you buy your lunch? I mean, I still take lunch from home.
It's
to
cheaper.
Be honest, it's cheaper, you know, and I also like it. You know,
It's healthier.
You know, yeah. And
or at least it is what you want, as you want it.
That's right, and I can check the quality as well, you know.
Yes, yes.
So if you think about, you know, you're spending, for instance, I don't know, $40 per day on lunch, you know, that gives you 40 times 5, that's 200, that's $800, $800 that you could have used for something else. So those are the things that you look at and you say, okay, where exactly can I still extract a little bit of savings from my spending plan? So it becomes very important. And then the other thing is that, you know, stay out of debt. I know that people tell me, yeah, Bruce, you know, but I have to go and, you know, borrow money because I can't make ends meet. But you've missed the first point in terms of when we started talking about the spending plan. So maybe, you know, just let's relook at that before we start borrowing, because borrowing is just, you know, you postpone the inevitable, because you'll have to pay that in any case, and you'll pay it at a higher cost. Right? So if we talk about effective strategies, it would be live within your means, you know, try to avoid debt, and try to build in some margin for those emergencies.
Speaking of those emergencies, so what would be an emergency fund other than, for instance, when one loses a job, the example that you flagged earlier, and how would one go about saving for that?
Right. So once again, you know, we talk about that margin that we try to build in. So what I advise people to do is that you can use sort of two strategies. The one would be, you look at your gross salary, and you take gross salary, you times that by 3. So if your gross salary is $10,000, you times that by 3, and you try to save in your emergency fund, you try to save up that $30,000. Or you can use your monthly expenses and then times that by 3. So 3 would be your minimum. Ideally, you would like to look at 6 months as your emergency fund. Now, once again, you know, I know that the realities on the ground may not be as perfect as we want it to be, but we have to strive to get to that, because otherwise, you know, you won't get to a point where you build up the you know, that extra cash that serves as a buffer, you know, when any emergency hits.
Is that emergency fund separate from other savings, and why is 3 months the target?
So emergency fund is not an investment vehicle. What you want to do is you still want to save that money and still earn an interest on that money. But that money really is for emergency purposes. You know, once again, when we talk about a job loss, or we talk about, you know, what if I my car was in an accident, and, you know, I have to pay extra for my car. My loved one got sick and I need to go to Grooteskier, you know, and I have to pay for that. So that's what your emergency fund is. And that emergency fund, we have what we call the 5 pillars of wealth. So your emergency fund is one of those first pillars that you have, that says, you know, I need to have X amount of cash available for emergencies.
You're saying it should be in an interest-bearing vehicle.
Yes.
Yet at the same time, one would imagine that one must have access to it readily.
That's right.
If the vehicle is of such a nature that I need to wait 32 days
100%.
or 100 days,
Yeah.
then it defeats the purpose, because the emergency doesn't care when it comes. If I need the money now, I need it now.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point where, you know, when we talk about those pillars, that you have the emergency fund first, short term, that we talked about, and then the long term. Because I do have people coming to me and say, look, you know, I've heard about this wonderful unit trust that I can invest in, and unit trust and some of those vehicles are for longer term. So you can't have an emergency fund in a long-term vehicle, because you may need that emergency fund or the cash in that emergency fund, and then the market, because you've invested in a unit trust, the market is down at that point in time, and then you actually, the $1,000 that you put in is now worth $900. So you would like to have an emergency fund. Immediately you can get some cash, and we have vehicles that say that can help you to earn interest while the money is there for a shorter term. Right? Why the 3 months? The 3 months is basically, you know, just so that if, let's say for instance, if you lose your job, you at least have 3 months breathing space, just to say, look, you know, I don't have to panic now. I can still go and, you know, I can look for another job. So it's important that, you know, and when we talk about the 3 months, it's basically yeah, I almost want to say conventional wisdom, if one can look at that. As I said, preferably, I would want to have 6 months, where I just have that breathing space, and I don't have to panic and run around and then make a potentially, a decision that that's not beneficial for me.
Potentially detrimental, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you shared with us that in terms of short term, we're talking about saving, and in terms of longer term, we're talking about investing. How does one weigh up when to save and when to invest? Of course, the emergency fund would be a saving.
That's right.
As opposed to an investment.
Yeah. So if you look at, so we when we talk about that 5 pillars of wealth, the first one is that, you need to have your goal. So why do I save? Why do I want to invest? Because people lack, people perish because of a lack of wisdom. So you sit with, you think you have to save because someone else saves. Now, saving in itself is a good thing, but why are you saving for? So you need to have those goals.
What are your specific goals?
What are your, is it for, for my child's education? Is it for me to, to have money available because I would like to start my own business in 5 years' time, and, I need to have cash?
Or retire early.
Or retire early. Economic, we talk about financial freedom. So when do I want to be financially free? And what you want to do is you want to have those goals in place first, because that's important. If you don't have those goals, because the goal will tell you what the dream for your money is. What is the vision? Otherwise, you'll just have something and you dip into it because this weekend is coming up and I would like to spend money because I have because I have that. Yeah. And then once you have that, it becomes in a case of how do I now structure that? And so the first pillar would be then let's look at an emergency fund so that I have my cash available. And once you're done with it, the 3 months or the 6 months that you've built up, you then can say, all right, now I can put some growth to my money. And now you start investing for the long term. So now you start investing in trust, maybe you do something on the stock market, that type of thing.
Can we take one slight step back? Is it your recommendation that one takes care of debt first, before you get to the emergency fund, before you ultimately get to the investment cycle?
So mostly yes, but also a little bit of no. So what you have is that emergency, I would, my recommendation would be build up your emergency fund.
In any event?
In any event. So start with that. If you want to, because I also know that people would like to have, a home. And they would like to, start early enough, so that they can pay it off before they retire. What one then can do is you can look at the excess money that you have once you've done your emergency fund and then say, all right, part of that I'll do for investments and part of that, I can start incurring debt. And I'm saying that cautiously.
Productive debt.
But this is productive debt, but also, for your home. So remember, your home is not really productive debt, because your productive debt is where you can earn an income from. So I would take money from the bank, and I would invest that money in a business, because that business is going to generate income for me. Now, your residence does not generate an income for you. But, we know that people need that.
Unless you erect flats at the back.
That's right.
And rent those out.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So what you can do is you can split, let's say your $100, you can then split and say, all right, I'll make money available for repayment of my residence, and the other one then for long-term savings. Ideally, what one want to have is that start with your investments early enough, and then keep with those investments until such time that you can afford a house. I'll give you this one. If you start working at 23, now 5,000 is a lot of money to save. But just for the example and for the illustration, if you take that 5,000 and you invest that 5,000 on a monthly basis, you will get, in just short of 11 years, you'll have your first million. Right. Now, if you continue with that, the second million will take you half of the 11 years. So it'll take you about 5 years. So what you want to do is you want compound interest to start working for you as early as possible, because the compound interest is the one that will generate that wealth that you require.
Hansen, I wish we had the entire day, but we don't. Any final thoughts this morning before we let you go?
Yeah, I think, I just want to say that I do understand the economic realities on the ground, but I can tell you now, it's not an unprecedented time. So what we need to do is we need to buckle down if we want to have, a good life for our families in the future, and if we want to be able to help others. We have to buckle down. We have to sacrifice a little bit. I'm not saying that you should not, be living, but it is important that we balance the short-term goals with the long-term goals, and the short-term needs with the long-term needs.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing your wealth of expertise this morning.
You're most welcome, Denver, and thank you for having me.
Mr. Bruce Hansen, he's the Managing Director at Simonis Storm,